Come on. There we go. Donald Davidoff, co-founder and CEO of Real Estate Business Analytics, here for yet another episode of The People Behind the Performance, where I sit down with key leaders and disruptors to dive into what's really driving the real estate industry's success, the role data plays in it, and tell stories of the people behind it all. I'm here today with guest Todd Watkins, who is the co-founder, chief operating officer, and general counsel of Railfield Partners, an experienced investor that focuses on high-quality multifamily assets while seeking to minimize risk, generate above-market return to investors, and create a sense of community for its residents. Prior to forming Railfield, Todd was a founding partner of J.S. Watkins Partners. That's an advisory firm that has advised clients on over $25 billion in multifamily transactions. Todd's previously held several positions at Fannie Mae, including director of capital markets in the multifamily group, near and dear to the hearts of many of our listeners, I'm sure, vice president and senior counsel at Merrill Lynch, and a corporate attorney with O'Melveny and Myers LLP. I hope I didn't butcher that. He has over 20 years of experience in multifamily industry. Just found out he's born in the same year I was. I'll let you all guess that. And a lot of expertise in real estate law, compliance, and deal structure. Welcome, Todd.
Well, thank you. How are you?
So let's dive right in. As you think about the state of the industry today, what's on your mind?
I guess it's what is it? It's the best of times, it's the worst of times.
Yes.
Right. So we have lease trade out that, every time I look at it, it's just a bigger figure. It's sort of like, we raise rents for grins, people come in and they do, no, we're going to give you more money for this, Well, at the same time, the economy's falling apart. It's like, this incredibly strange world we live in which, we've got 9% inflation, but we're getting 12% lift on our rents. It can't last. Which direction it goes in is a real sort of problem. If you look at, we had an inverted yield curve last week. So, does that mean we are going to have a recession? It has in the past. But, at the same time, I'm the father of two young daughters who seemingly are in the greatest job market around. So they're not worried about it. It's sort of one of them's going to give. And so, I guess as someone who is, I know you mentioned our birth year, but as someone who's been around for a little while, I've been through enough cycles where I'm nervous that I'm concerned that things could go south. That, there's a lot of groupthink in the industry. So it makes me nervous, whenever someone says the business cycle's going away, it never does. It
is funny on the operational side. At NAA just a month ago, it was incredible how sanguine everybody was. And, the inverted yield curve, that's always interesting. I forget the exact quote, but isn't it something like, inverted yield curves have predicted 12 of the last 8 recessions or something like that. So,
that's right.
It's definitely cause for concern, but even, what is it? I think I heard today on Morning Joe that JP Morgan or somebody is still like 50% chance of recession in the next year. So who knows?
Yeah, I wish I could get paid for not making a guess.
50%. Yeah, flip a coin. Well, is it 50%? Either we're going to have a recession or not.
You can't be wrong.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so you brought up rent growth, and you're in an interesting position because you have some market rent properties, but you're also very much in the affordable side. And affordability is such a hot topic right now, right? Even more so with soaring inflation. What attracted you to this space? And how do you see the nation, or do you see the nation ever solving this incredibly complex issue?
Solving is bigger. That's a much bigger problem. I think that we are already so far behind in the number of housing units we've built as a country that to say we're going to solve it in anything like the near term is, it would require a political will that I haven't seen in a long, long time for anything. So what are we going to do? And why? And partly why we like it is it's kind of inflation proof. We will have people there, the subsidies come in, we tend to actually be somewhat below market even in the affordable space. And so it's, the properties, they stay full. They are, they're wait lists on some of them. The COVID threw us a wrench. So, because they were with the moratoriums and then people sort of stopped paying and stopped believing they had to pay. But it's, I think it's funny. It's a different type of tenant, and so you deal with some people who are everybody wants safe, affordable, sanitary housing, right? Safe and sanitary housing,
right?
But you can get, when you get into the more market space, sometimes you'll find people who are looking for more hotel space then.
Right.
And so you'll find that some of the staff is like, I didn't know I was running concierge, and we're like, no, you are. That's part of it. And I personally believe
Right.
we have a lot to learn from the hotel business. But when I think about the affordable business, it is maintaining a place that people want to and can live and feel secure in their communities. And that's difficult. I mean, we all watched some of the crime stats, and there are places where it's getting worse. And
Yeah.
we all understand that many of the crimes are sort of crimes of opportunity. So you want to make sure that your place is not the place, is the place people know not to stop.
Right.
So there are definitely different hot buttons that you
Mhm.
want to do. But I think for me, it's always a matter of making sure that when you go by one of our communities, it looks like people care. And it's
Yeah.
amazing at the number of times we've picked up a community where it really doesn't require a whole lot. I mean, everything, they're all, of a
Mhm.
sort of older vintage. I guess that's a nice way to talk about us too. But
Yeah.
but it is. But so, there's always some CapEx work and stuff like that. But it's just taking care of things. It's, all the lighting being uniform. You can see
Right.
places where people have just stopped getting, they just run off to Home Depot and they get one thing. And that's just a sign that people just don't care about it. And I think
Yeah.
that's the one thing I never once said about any of our properties.
No, I hadn't thought about it, but that's a really good observation that if you just having a clean, consistent look, it sends the cue that somebody paid attention, somebody
Yeah.
cared.
Yeah.
And that hodgepodge, it just feels there's a dissonance to that, and you just sort of recognize that's a really, really good insight. So again, anybody, you can have C-class properties. It doesn't mean you can't have consistent specs.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think the tenants really believe it. They see it. They feel it. It's that,
Mhm.
it's the care, and that's, I think,
Yeah.
what you want. And so they respect it too. People don't leave
Yeah.
their trash out as much, in places that are cared for.
It's funny you say that because again, we were talking when we were prepping for this. Obviously, my background with Archstones is decidedly A-class, all market rate. But I think of the problems we had with pet poop, and if you let it stay
Yep.
there,
Yep.
it attracts.
Yep.
On the other hand, if you put up some whimsical signs to remind people, and then if you have a porter, make sure twice a day you're cleaning it up. The one or two times it happens, if you clean it up quickly, other people don't do it. But once one person's allowed to do it, everybody else goes, well, why shouldn't I do it?
Right. It becomes accepted or acceptable.
Mhm.
And so then everyone starts doing it. Why should I be the one idiot who's picking up when no one else is? When it is compared with, everyone's doing it. Why would I be the one jerk who's leaving it there for everyone else to deal with?
Yeah, no, I mean that group psychology is something that is fascinating. And my background in pricing, I'm always interested in the psychology of things as well. So again, you straddle the affordable and the market rate world. What do you think multifamily should be doing right now, given, let's say, a better than even chance of a recession? No guarantee, but a better than even chance of recession on the horizon.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, in the A-class space, I'm a little more concerned, right? Because people can always move down. So that's what makes me nervous. In the sort of, call it BC class, I'm not as concerned. I feel like we can keep going. There'll be more people. There may be more demand, probably in the D more than the C, but there could well be more demand. But in the A class, I think we need to, sort of continue to stick to our knitting. I mean, you have to continue to make it the place that people want to live. So, I think that, there is a prospect of thinking, I've seen it said in a couple of ways, so that's why I'm kind of hesitating, where people say it's like, they, it's like, they don't live where we work where they live, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, when we talk about building communities, I've said it a bunch of times, we say it all the time, where, we have a property that was built in like 2021, right? So all I can tell you, and I couldn't tell you anything much about other areas, for our own reasons, but right next door, something newer was built. So whatever amenities we had, something newer was put up the next day. Whatever else we had, something newer. So it can't just be a place where people want to drop their stuff. It's got to be a community. And so I think that is actually sort of a defensive, I see it as a kind of a defensive mechanism of, more resident events, more, contact with your residents. Just more ways to make it the place that, they want to refer their friends. They don't want to get referrals to move other places. So I think that, it will be, and I haven't sat in this chair. I like to say at some point I've sat in every chair in multifamily, but I haven't sat in this chair during a recession. But I think that, it's not, I mean, it's a lot of blocking and tackling, I
Yeah.
mean, we're not running Facebook, I don't need to have
Yeah.
9,000 algorithms. So I think
Right.
as long as we can stick to what we're doing and make sure that we are always close to our tenants or residents, sorry, we'll be good.
Yeah, and I think, with my background in technology, I've always liked, not just that sense of community, but bringing technology to make it easier for residents. I mean, one of our internal mottos at Archstone, or at least within the tech team, was we always wanted to be the easiest company to live with and to work for. And really tried to, if people wanted personal attention, we had somebody there to do it. If they didn't want to talk to somebody, we wanted to make it as easy for them to communicate through technology. It was an and, not an or kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think it's interesting. Like I said, I'm the father of a couple of, 20-somethings, and they aren't particularly interested in talking to people. And this sort of 24/7 economy, if they want to be able to get in touch with somebody whenever they can,
Yeah.
I think it's great. What I do, and we sort of talked about it a little in prep, I do get concerned that it makes some of the staff, lazier. They're not as tech because they're like, we did a shop on someone and they, they didn't actually try and close effectively. They said, well, here's how you can apply online. It becomes, you can't allow people.
That is a danger.
Yeah, and I'll admit, I'm a little afraid of technology, not because I'm not afraid of, because I'm afraid of technology. I'm afraid of how it affects people because it can make them lazy and it can make them, not as responsive as we really need to be to truly compete.
No, it's a good point. I mean, it's funny when you were talking, it maybe reminded me of my now 24-year-old. When she was like 16, she was complaining that a friend wasn't responding to her text. And I said, well, why don't you call her? And the look on her face was like I was from Mars. And so I said, well, okay, let me ask a question. Do you ever use your phone to call anybody? And she thought for a moment and said, well, yeah, you and mom.
Right.
And it was then that I realized that, this thing to me is a phone that happens to give me access to the internet. But to my daughters, this is a computer that has this weird function called phone that they never use.
Right.
It's fascinating. I don't know what to do with that, but it's very real.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, we had times where, I'll say like, let's order dinner, and they'll go online and do it. It's like, just call them. They actually know. I mean, it's not like we go to all these places. They actually know us. They'll see the phone number and have our order ready. But no, they can't do it. And I actually think it's kind of I would have never said this, and God, my father would roll over in his grave. Hear him say, it's almost a skill that's being lost of talking to people. So it's really amazing. So like I say, I am I'm concerned. It's one of my fears of technology, and we use it. We bring it in all the time. Sometimes I also feel like, people think it's the answer to everything. And so, I want to use, I want to use a guided tour. I want to use a virtual tour. I want to, okay, so fine, we're going to pay for all this stuff. But, and I always say, and people hate me for saying this, but, okay, so who's telling the assistant leasing that she's fired?
Yeah. No, I get that. Hey, let's turn a little bit to the personal side. How did you start out in this industry?
So it's funny. I was a bond lawyer at O'Melveny, and one of my clients was Fannie Mae. And so I had one of these horrible late nights where I got a call from an underwriter. This guy was at Goldman Sachs, and I'll admit it, I'm sort of pre-Excel. And so he basically just asked me to add up a bunch of numbers. I did. I called him back. He said, thanks, great. And then at the end of the deal, I was redoing his the Goldman engagement letter and realized that he was probably going to make personally more than my firm was going to make. And I was like, I have to get out of here. I'm in the wrong point in the food chain. And so I left. I went to Fannie Mae. And then there was a Super Bowl ad that it was a bunch of little kids, and they were playing adults, and they said, and the kids would go like, I want to file all day. I want to claw my way to middle management. And I was like, oh my God, I'm having a midlife crisis right now. And I was like, I have to move. And so talked to John, my business partner, and we collectively decided that, we needed to find a way into the part of the business that we really had always wanted to be in, which was as a principal.
Really cool, really cool. So when you look back on your career, who's the most influential professional mentor you ever had?
Wow. I think it would probably be there was a guy by the name of Rick Jones who
Mhm.
was a partner at, he was a bond partner at O'Melveny. And I remember he said to me, he was very nice to me, always very nice. Took my wife and I, before we had children, we'd go to his weekend house, all this sort of stuff. But at one point we were doing, it was my first big deal, big deal.
Huh?
And we walked in the room and it was actually a bond offering. And he stops outside and he goes, I don't know what you've heard about me, but it's $1 billion deal, so don't fuck it up. He goes, I don't do a lot of management. So, but I have taken from that a lot, and he was great and all that sort of. But there is a measure in you have to let people be themselves, be creative. You don't overstep. You have to allow people to sort of get out there, try. Not even give them enough rope to hang themselves, but enough
Right.
to sort of show what they can do. I think that
Yeah.
anytime you're sort of watching somebody do their homework, you're wasting your time, and if they can't do it, then you're probably they're probably wasting your time
Yeah.
too.
It's funny you say that, because not that I'm always as good at this as I wish I was as a CEO, but I at least try to remind myself, look, if somebody's doing something that's going to result in a head-on collision at 60 miles an hour and total carnage, then you got to step in.
Yeah.
But if it's 5 or 10 miles an hour and it's just going to be a fender bender, like, some of my best lessons came from mistakes, and you got to let people make mistakes. You got to let people learn from it. And that's so hard when you know what they're doing is wrong.
Yeah.
And you can stop it, but you got to let them learn their own lesson.
Yep.
It's hard.
That is the learning. I was the chairman of the board of a nonprofit, which used to send kids all over the world. And we had this whole junior branch. And I remember when my first year, the junior branch moved all of their governance from one side to basically to another. And in the second year, they moved it all the way back. And I said to somebody, it's like, can't we just tell them what to do? And they're like, no, that's the learning, And so you have to be able to sit there and watch them do it. And I was like, okay, and that's it's one of the things you learn.
Yeah. So here's one of my favorite questions. Hopefully it's not the answer you just gave. You got another one. What's the one thing that you wish you could go back and teach Todd Watkins from when you entered the industry? Because you know something that Todd Watkins today knows something that Todd Watkins back then didn't know, and you wish you could have taught that person that back then.
I think, and we talked about this a little bit before, I think there is that groupthink is really powerful, and that there is it's funny that it's about technology. There's sort of a slavish belief in machines. So that, when a model comes out and says something, when a forecast comes out and says something, you can just watch people move instantly to that position.
Yeah.
So, and I had nothing to do with this, but some of my partners are very good at, picking markets. So we got to Richmond, or we got to San Antonio, sorry, and then within a year, it was on the top 10 list of cities to move to. We went to Richmond, and then within a year, it was in the top 10 cities to move to. But it's amazing how quickly just being put on something like that can make everyone move. So I say that going back to technology, it's that, we were talking about people becoming sort of slaves to the machines. There's a sense that people that you have to make sure you're constantly thinking about the answer, not just accepting the answers that come out. So, I mean, if nothing else, all the news is sort of everyone needs a headline. Everyone, every day somebody needs a new headline. So they're going to put out something. It doesn't make it necessarily true, but they're going to put out something.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, it's not because some of that conversation we had on technology was just you and me before we started the interview. So we were talking about a little bit about LRO and revenue management, and you were saying you had maybe a bit of a provocative position. I think I surprised you when I said I pretty much agree with you. So why don't you share with the audience what you said, and then I'll give my little commentary.
No, I think now I thought it was I thought I was saying something unusual. Now apparently I'm not. I'm just another schmuck out here. But I think that I personally think I don't like our reliance on the models. I think that they make people lazy because they make people believe them, and they are also so complicated that most people don't know how to use them. Who even the people who are relying on them don't know how to use them, and so we end up, what we used to say. Even remember when people we have to go through those CMBS, sort of doing all the tranches, and people would say, oh well, they come with it. And I was like, it's just a big calculator. And I was like, it's got a 7, but it's just a big calculator. But they would say, no, but the model told me. And I hear so often on some of these calls, well, the model told us to do this. And I think that, it is, by definition, it's backward looking, right? I mean, it projects, but it's by definition backward looking. And so the notion that the person who we're paying now, $60, $80, $100,000 to run a $60 million corporation, each one of these property manager cannot handle the piece of equipment that they are most reliant on is, it's just sad. I mean, and I think that they could be, and I think that by just to finish the thought, is they do know how to do the job, right? They were they were calling their comps, they were getting out and walking around, they did understand their competition, and now they're able to say, but the model said so.
Yeah. So it is interesting. I mean, I agree with a lot of what you say, and you brought up something that we didn't talk about before that maybe I'll counter a little bit. It's interesting, hopefully for the audience to hear. So I agree with you. I get very, very nervous that just because the model says something doesn't mean it's true. Totally agree with that. In fact, I shared with you one of our sayings back at Archstone was LRO is not an excuse to turn off your brain. And you own your asset. You've got intuition. You've got local knowledge. Like, speak up. Right. One of the things that really attracted me to pricing personally is I'm the kind of person, if all I did was technical stuff, I'd actually get kind of bored with the tediousness. And if all I did was manage people, I'd go nuts with how people just drive you crazy. And there's something about the nexus between the two, right? Like, how do you make technology work with people? How do you make people work with technology? That attracted me. And so it's very interesting because in the early days of LRO, of revenue management, there was a lot more skepticism just around, hey, it's a new model. Is it really working? There was a lot more back and forth. I do worry that it's just that everything's become accepted wisdom. And I think I'd shared with you before, on a system like LRO, if you're overriding more than a certain percent, you're fighting the system. That's bad. Right. But if you're not overriding at least a certain percent, then you're trusting a math model that can't possibly be right all the time.
Right.
And so it's a challenge to find that difference. The one thing I will say, and I experienced this, from when I got in the industry in '99 through into the late aughts, et cetera, is I do think that the community manager, like, you go back to the 1980s, and a community manager could handle being the mini CEO. I think that in today's world, it's gotten so complex, right? That, like, how could a community manager at $60,000, $80,000 a year be a mini CEO who's an expert on pricing, an expert on customer service, an expert on employee management, an expert on digital marketing, et cetera, et cetera? So what I really have espoused, and again, I'll go back to my Archstone days, it was really part of our approach, was trying to separate which were the things where detailed expertise centrally located could help guide the properties versus what were the things that somebody could only do really well if they were there in the field. And that tended to separate between technology and people. So, the technology stuff tended to become centralized. The customer service and employee management became decentralized. And to your earlier point, take that to an extreme, right? A weakness is a strength overdone. If you overdo it, then technology rules and you stop listening to people. Right. The trick is, how do you bring that expertise from a pricing expert, from a digital marketing expert, and yet still include that local intuition? And I'm not pretending that's easy.
Yeah, I don't know, but I think that to put it all in the pricing, which seems to be one point, does a little, because, like, for example, you talk about the customer service, right? So now that is something that can actually be centralized and taken offsite because they have now everyone's got their AI model person who's there, right? So some of that customer service, some of that, as we talked about our children, that does, they don't care if they're talking to someone in Bangladesh or someone who doesn't really exist, so that doesn't need to be on site. So there are different ways to deal with that, even on the maintenance side. I mean, you cannot get someone remote to flush a toilet, or to fix a toilet, no doubt about that. But the ticketing, the technology that's there, I mean, it's just that there are multiple places to apply it and multiple places to do it. So, if you just said, I want to take one of those off of the hands of a property manager, maybe that was the case. But I think what you may want to do is instead is sort of lift the load or lighten the load across.
I think that makes sense. And again, it is interesting. I mean, technology now has allowed a lot more things to be centralized than before. And I mean, my 15 years in operations, it was always, how do you crack the 1 for 100, right? The one employee per 100 units. Okay, here we are 10 years past my being in ops, and companies are cracking the 1 for 100 with that kind of centralization you were talking about. Really, really interesting stuff. Cool. So a couple more things, and then we'll get to the end. What do you see as the biggest challenge that Railfield's facing right now, and how are you overcoming it?
I mean, for in our state of, firm, we're 8 years old.
Mhm.
It's growth. I mean, like right now we are blessed. We've gone through, a period of had an early institutional start, got some private family money, now seem to have found our way, knock wood, back into institutional. And so we are finding opportunities to grow. But we're still, it's always, best times, worst times, it's always a tender
Yeah.
thing. And so it's trying to be smart in deploying things. It's also, we always say, everyone's got their sayings, but we always say, there are only sort of 15 good minutes in this business where it's like, where the bid ask
Yeah.
comes right to where it's supposed to be. And right now, having sort of our own, sort of quasi discretionary funds, as sort of some of the deals are starting to fall apart, all of a sudden it's like, we're winning things. And so
Okay.
so it's great, but I mean, it's going to go away. But, then
Yeah.
it's the growth, it's the how do you handle it without taking on too much, while with the infrastructure we have, or going out and finding people sort of just in time. So it's a constant measure. I mean, it's they're first world problems, I suppose, is dealing with
Yeah.
growth.
Good.
But
Always good to have first
I
world
mean,
problems.
but yeah, I think that, and it's it's a money business, so we're constantly searching for cash and investors. All of you out there, by the
Yeah.
way, we're call my partners at Railfield.
So let me turn near and dear to Reba's heart. Obviously, as a data analytics platform, what does data-driven decision making mean to you, and how is Railfield going about approaching data and data analytics?
Yeah, so it's funny. This is the one thing I actually prepared for. I was sort of trying to think about, because I mean, there's a part of me that says, well, what is data, right? And so, so
Mhm.
like I sort of glance at the papers and all the markets that we're in, is, I consider that to be data. I'm taking in sort of the
Yep.
feel of it. So I think that, if data is purely sort of, the stuff that comes in off a spreadsheet, or that comes in out of, Red IQ or RealPage analytics, my side of the business uses RealPage. We see, we know our, price per square foot and all that. I think that for me, I look at data perhaps more, how would I say it? Skeptically,
Mhm.
because like I always say, it's all about the denominator. So you have to
Mhm.
sort of figure out exactly the context of data, not just watching numbers. I mean, I think that for us, it is, as we get bigger, you have to rely more on data, because you just can't get the touch and feel as you
Right.
used to. But it still kind of makes me nervous. I guess, I mean, I'd like to say I'm old school, but I'm coming to grips with the notion that I'm just old. But I think that it is, as it's a necessity as we scale,
Mhm.
and we all have to become more cognizant about it, but also, realize that I want to measure what's important, not think that because it's measured that it is important. And
Yeah.
so, we look at, I mean, it's constantly NOI growth, and it's constantly collections. So,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think, there are a lot of things where, if I'm up, 2 cents per square foot, that's great. But, okay, so what are the square foot of my units versus my competitors' units? Is it really, I personally don't think that anybody walks in saying, I want a, 1,650 square foot apartment. They're
Yeah.
like, I'd like a two bedroom that, has, because, and a lot of them have sort of wasted space, all that sort of stuff. So I
Yeah.
think it is, I think it is a way, as we grow, we have to come to grips with the fact that our senior people have become more able to deal with the data, because we're seeing it across bigger platform. And some of the junior people have become less dependent on data, because they have to get out and away from
And feel
spreadsheets
it.
and see the
Yeah.
feel. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was talking about seeing the business in the numbers and
Hmm.
seeing the numbers in the business. And if you only do one, you're not really getting the full picture.
Yeah.
Well, that's been a lot of fun. Let's go ahead. We always like to, after doing the heavy lifting, we like to end these interviews with a little rapid fire, sort of James Lipton style Q&A. So the only rule is don't think too hard. Okay.
Uh-oh.
So I got
Oh, no, that's
7 or 8 questions. 7 or 8 questions, real quick. What book has influenced you the most?
um, Probably The Godfather, the book, not the movie.
Okay. What's your favorite time of day?
Morning.
What's your favorite app?
Oh, Spotify.
Spotify, cool. What's your biggest pet peeve? What's an easy way to annoy you?
uh, so my wife isn't going to watch this, right?
No, we won't send it to her.
No. Long answers, overly long meetings.
Yeah. What's your spirit animal?
I don't even know what a spirit animal is. I assume I have a Belgian Malinois. Can he count?
Yeah, he can count.
I have a dog.
That'll work. Last two questions. If you had to pick one food to eat forever, what would you eat?
Oh, lamb ragu.
Wow. Now I'm hungry. You just made me think of my favorite Italian restaurant here in Denver, because they have a really crazy lamb ragu on a
so
upper
good.
deli. Really good.
Oh yeah.
Last question. What's your go-to for having a good laugh?
Honestly, Frasier.
Frasier. Yeah, so that is hilarious. Some of the people watching this will know that I recently spent 10 days in a Swedish hospital for a burst appendix rather than my planned vacation with my family. But I actually watched 5 old episodes of Frasier on the entertainment coming back home.
It's so funny. It
really is.
So well done.
And it holds up. I mean,
It
it's
does.
25 plus years old. It held up.
So like late at night, if I can't get to sleep, I turn on Frasier.
There you go. Well, thanks so much for sharing your insights with us, Todd. Where can everyone find out a little more about you and Railfield online? So
come to railfieldrealty.com, RAILFIELD REALTY. Sorry, it's long, but someone else had stolen it. So railfieldrealty.com. Look for us. We're always available. My partners, Ken Bacon and John Siegel, are always available, always interested in talking to more people. So thanks so much. Well, thanks so much, Todd. It's really been great having you. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Have a great day. Okay.